Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Ealing Road podcast, where on today's show we're going to be briefly looking back on final day defeat against Newcastle. We won't spend too much time on it given that it's the season finale, but we're also going to be doing the Ealing Road podcast end of season awards, which is going to be a lot of fun. We've got full house for it. Craig, how are we, mate? Fresh off your 8-2 defeat last night down at the G-Tech. Tell us all about it.
Well, you didn't have to mention all of that, I don't reckon. I had a lot of fun. It was a brilliant evening to play with some of the other fans on the G-Tech pitch. It was just an experience that, a lot of fans want to do an experience. I feel very privileged to have been able to do it.
Good stuff. Dan, how are we?
Yeah, all good. All good.
Callum, all good?
Very well. Good to be back, boys, for the end of season finale. So it's probably some interesting points as always, as someone said to me on Saturday. So I'm good. I'm glad to be back. Glad to be back.
Good stuff. Just before we get going, guys, one last time for the season, remember to drop a comment down below, subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels, and also give us a follow on our socials, which we're going to be more active over next season. Thinking of starting a TikTok channel and also potentially a few more social media channels. Going to be uploaded some YouTube shorts as well as TikToks. So do keep your eyes peeled. There's Ealing Road at the Ealing Road on Twitter and Ealing Road Pod on Instagram. Tweet of the week. We'll start with the final one of the season. Thought we kick off this episode with a tweet that will cause a bit of debate. We've got at LewisW_FF on Twitter saying, going to be a long year if Frank doesn't grow some balls to drop his favourites. Realistically, Norgard and Janelt shouldn't play together in a three. Ridiculous how deep they both were today. It wasn't a game for our midfield against Newcastle, boys. It really wasn't. The space at some points in the game, especially in the first, in both halves, really, whenever there was a transition in midfield, it looked like Norgard, whether that was Norgard, Janelt and Jensen or Damsgaard when he came on as well, there was just so much space at all times. Whenever they picked up the ball, that it just looked like they had acres to drive at. But I thought we kicked things off just by starting a debate between Norgard and Janelt, whether they can play in a three together, who's the better six out of the two. Because we've spoken about it a little bit in the last couple of podcasts, but we've not really I don't think we've come to a kind of definitive answer. So we go around the room. Who do we think is better in the sixth role, Craig? Norgard or Janelt?
I think that the argument kind of comes down to influence within the team more than actual ability, because you're talking about the captain compared to, arguably was one of our players of the season in Janelt. But I think that I would actually trust Norgard more as a six defensively. When the ball is coming towards him, he's always quite composed. He doesn't make a mistake very often. Janelt doesn't make a mistake very often. But what Janelt has is that versatility about him, where he can play in so many different positions. I mean, over the last couple of years, we've seen him play at left back, at left wing back, at centre back, in midfield, a bit further forward in midfield as well. Whereas Norgard, we see him play in centre back. I remember in the Championship, he played in the centre back of a back five, and he did really well. But defensively in midfield, I would have Norgard over Janelt. But I think the fact that he's captain also goes in his favour.
Yeah, Dan, do you think that they should be playing together in a three?
Not really. I think perhaps one of the things we need to look at in the summer is that third midfielder. I think the job of Norgard or the six is to essentially just break up play, get their interceptions in, lay it off to someone who's perhaps more creative. You've got Jensen, who is more of that playmaker, but if he's not on it, there's no creativity really in that midfield three. And I think really we need almost like a Josh Da Silva type player as the third midfielder. Obviously, we've not been able to have Josh Da Silva in the last couple of years, and he's not someone we can rely on. But I think to make that midfield more dynamic, I think you need a different type in that midfield three. I think they're too similar. Maybe if you're playing like the very, very top teams, it's useful to have, two of that type. But normally we play a back five in those situations anyway. So I think, a different type of midfield is needed, and Janelt's very helpful to the team. Like we've already covered, he's very versatile. So there's a place for him, but I do think, we do need to do something about that third midfield position, I think.
Yeah, because I think Norgard's definitely more of a natural six. I think Janelt could probably play as that 8 box-to-box player, but I think Jensen does that well already. And then you've got Damsgaard as a 10. So Damsgaard's replacement, if he was to get injured, would be Josh De Silva whenever he's fit. But also, Callum, I was going to talk about this later in the rundown, but Emre Konyak, the Turkish lad who somehow got injured on his first day of training, it sounds like, at Brentford, was on the bench against Newcastle on the final day. I thought that might be just like to give him a taste of what a first team match day feels like playing for Brentford. He's clearly quite rated. I remember reading an article when we signed him. I think there was a Turkish journalist saying that he was kind of the brightest prospect to come out of the Turkish league in recent years. So it was promising to see him on a bench. Do you think he's someone that we might see more of next year, Callum?
I'd like to think so. The only issue is obviously we've got so much quality in that midfield. You've kind of got to wonder how he's going to possibly fit into that particular setup, unless there's any departures, of course, or anything like that. But no, I've heard very good things. I haven't seen much of him, obviously, because he got injured, unfortunately, his first day of training, which is never a very good start to the start of your new club career. But I mean, look, you've seen Thomas Frank's proved in the past he's given players an opportunity to develop in a squad. If he thinks they're good enough, he will chuck them in. Just the weather we'll see him next season. Who knows? I mean, we touched upon earlier the quality we've already got. We've got Jan out, we've got Norgard, we've got De Silva when he's back, whenever that will be. We've got players across the park. But I'd love to see new players come through. I think it'd be really good. But I think personally, a loan would be better for him. We've seen a lot of players go off this season, do very well on loan, and then bring him back the season after, and then create a player out of him from there. So, well, it'll be interesting to see. For
sure. I think it definitely, I don't know what the strategy from the club's going to be in terms of if he goes on loan or if he comes straight into the first team. But I definitely remember there are a lot of clubs in for him, and he's very highly touted in that league. We'll go on to Newcastle, but just before we do, Dan, someone came up to the game and said we should drop the tweet of the week segment. So I don't want to. I want to hear what you boys think. I always find it quite funny, like just seeing even against Newcastle the meltdown at halftime. That there was a tweet that very nearly made it into tweet of the week this week from the Super Bees, who kind of makes the odd appearance here and there, saying like it was a fucking disgrace and that we should be embarrassed that we were 3-0 down to Newcastle on the last day of the season when there was nothing on the line. But what did that person say to the game, Dan? Just that we should drop it, or we shouldn't take opinions from Twitter?
Yeah, they were saying it's not reflective of the wider fan base's view, and I understand that. And this segment isn't meant to be reflective of the wider fan base view. It is meant to be controversial. It's meant to provide a talking point. And it's very rare that we agree with whatever that person in the tweet is saying. Obviously, people get very emotional on a match day, particularly if we've lost. And instead of filtering
no comment.
Instead of filtering that information, they type away on Twitter, and then all of a sudden they're on a podcast. But any way people want to get in touch with us, if you've got an interesting enough view. Then
I say keep it. I get more airtime when I get the tweet of the week, so I say keep it.
100%. Just on that note, if you do see any of us at the games, do come up to us, say hello, tell us what you like about the pod, tell us what you don't like about the pod. We're always trying to sort of come up with new ways to make it better, or kind of jettison stuff that doesn't work. But I think tweet of the week, like Dan said, it's purely just for the controversy. It's not really that we agree with these tweets. It's just that we like to laugh at the people who send them, especially when Callum does it. But yeah, let's move on to Newcastle. Where to start, boys? Felt like we started the game really well and then reverted to type with conceding in twos, which you pointed out earlier in the season, Dan. It's not really the way to go about in football. Initial reaction to the 4-2 defeat, Dan?
I think I'm glad that we came back to an extent in the second half. I think after that first half, being 3-0 down, it just looked very flat, and almost I really wasn't looking forward to the second half, to be honest. And it was nice that, we did show some fight in the second half. The result didn't really matter, but, we scored a couple of nice goals. And at one point, it did look like we could get back into the game. So I'm pleased that we showed some fight. And it didn't just fizzle out, because it could have got quite ugly in that second half if it carried on the way it was going. The result didn't surprise me. I'm not too bothered that we lost the game in the end, but it was just a bit more pleasing that we did show something in the second half and didn't just completely fizzle out.
Yeah, I think purely by virtue of the fact that there was nothing riding on the game when we went 3-0 down. Not that I didn't care, but I just didn't. Well, no, I didn't really give a toss, to be honest. We were 3-0 down, but Newcastle were a good side. They had something to play for, and we didn't. Would it be fair to say though, Craig, that it could have been a different result with Ayer and Collins in the side? I know that their second 2 goals were particularly just like self-inflicted, typical Brentford this season, giving the ball away at the back. It reminded me almost of the Wolves at home game, but I think with Ayer and Collins in the side over Zanka and maybe not Mads, but Zanka for sure. I feel like the groans from the West Stand were audible every time Zanka gave the ball away or did something silly. But I don't think we can really be relying on him next season for sure, Craig.
No, no, I'm surprised that he's actually still got another year left on his contract. I thought that he was one of the ones that would have been going in the summer. I don't see us getting rid of him based on the fact that the club see him as that, experienced figure, even though he's not very good. He's not really up to the caliber of player that we want. If Thomas Frank's post-match speech is what we should be going by, if we're a club that want to be pushing ourselves further and further forwards, players like him, unfortunately, are not of the caliber in which we want involved in the club. We need to be looking at that next step of player. If Ayer plays in there, if Collins plays in there, I think it is a totally different game. We all know Collins is susceptible to a mistake, but one thing that we can agree on is the fact that he never backs out of a challenge. And I feel like whenever the ball is in the air and Zanka has someone coming towards him, he has a tendency to get himself out of a situation rather than actually be part of it and get himself into a position in where he can clear it. I was getting so frustrated with the amount of times I kept seeing him like duck out of the header. And I said it in our chat, didn't I? Why does he keep ducking? Whenever a ball's coming towards him, see him going duck this, and it was pissing me off more and more. I was watching it, but if we have Collins in there, I think it's a different game.
Yeah, for sure. I think we should talk about the Ivan Toney offside. Well, I still don't know who was flagged offside because I watched it back on Match of the Day. They didn't show the VAR decision. They didn't do anything.
Jensen.
Was it Jensen?
Yeah.
Jensen penalised. I think, Callum, it would have been the perfect send-off for Ivan. And although like we've all criticised him this season because of what he said in interviews and because this comeback that he kind of hyped up just by himself has kind of flopped a little bit. But I do think 90% of Brentford fans would have been happy for him to get that goal on probably what would be his last game for Brentford.
Massively, probably would have added an extra 10 million to his fee as well. But no, it was. I was frustrated for him. I think it was a good move as well from us, and we haven't seen Brentford score as early as that for quite a while. So I was thinking, good way to end the season. And good way for him to end the season, but of course VAR intervened as it ever so does nowadays. But it was a frustrating game for Toney. I thought, he obviously set up Wissa's goal where he made a bit of a nuisance of himself with the back line. But other than that, I thought it was another frustrating game for Ivan. I think for his own sake, I think another game where he should have been taken off early and put Wissa as the front man. I was frustrated in parts with Ivan. He's one of those players, I think, boys. I think he 1 minute he can do something brilliant, and the next, he's that frustrating individual. I don't know if anyone saw it, but he was properly having a go at the back line on Saturday in the first half, or Sunday, should I say, at Mads in particular. And I thought, he can't really say very much himself when he's not really involved himself personally. So I think there was a lot of frustration from the team, a lot of frustration for Ivan. He's served us well, but I think it's time for him to leave. And I still think Newcastle is his ideal destination personally. I don't think anyone else really is going to come in for him personally, but I might be proven wrong. But it'll be an interesting summer for Ivan Toney, I'm sure of it.
I saw him yapping away at Mads, and he kept on going at him. And I was just, if you watch the first goal back, Tony's following Guimaraes. He gets back to him, then Guimaraes drops his shoulder and gets past him, and he allows him to put in a cross, and then Harvey Barnes buries it. So I presume what Tony was trying to say to Mads is get tight to your man. But it's like pot kettle black, mate.
It's not his first time this season. He's done that a few times this season. At the end of the Aston Villa game at Villa Park, I think he was having a go at Collins for not crossing it sooner. I'm not sure it was really on at the time. Generally, I thought though he was better. I thought he was a bit better this weekend than he has been previously. He had that header as well, which Nick Pope produced a really, really good
Yeah,
save.
that was incredible save.
Gareth Southgate was there though, so I don't know if that coincidence.
I think that we're seeing signs of a striker that's very frustrated. Like he's definitely not the striker that he is when he's scoring a lot of goals. Maybe he's low in confidence or whatnot, but he's not. You know, we've never seen him really like that with other players since he's been on this longer run of not scoring. And I think it's just pent up frustrations of the fact that he's been so poor in front of goal recently.
For sure. I don't think we're going to dissect each goal in that first half. We kind of already have. It's just sloppy defending. I think Isak kind of had Pinnock on toast in that first half, if I'm honest. It was uncharacteristically poor performance from Pinnock, but we'll forgive him because he's my player of the season for sure. Harvey Barnes, hear me out, by the way. Harvey Barnes, England squad? Just saying. No left winger. Rashford not in the squad. We need one with pace. I'll die on this hill. I absolutely love Harvey Barnes. I think he's fantastic, and he always scores against us, the prick. But we'll talk about the second half. Came out flying. Yeah, I think it's class. Genuinely, I don't even think it's a bad shout. Obviously, he's been injured for most of the season, but since he's come back, I think it was a game against I can't remember who they played at home when he scored a brace to turn it around. I can't remember who it was when Newcastle played, but he scored an absolute belter, and I think since then he's been in good form. But with Rashford out the team, and everyone's complaint about England is that we don't have like someone with Rashford's pace who's direct on that left wing that can change a game. Obviously Gordon's there as well, so it's obviously going to be a toss-up between Gordon or Barnes or someone else. But you've got thoughts about Gordon. Listen, we're going to talk about England over the summer anyway. So I don't know. I saw that tweet. What's wrong with Gordon? I think Gordon's class.
I think Gordon's a great player.
Great this season.
Irritating to play against, but
he might be a good player, but I despise him.
He's got a very punchable face.
He's the most Scouse-looking Scouser I've ever seen, ever. The most rat-looking Scouser as well.
Yeah. Second half came up flying, slick football with the first goal. Thoughts on him being named player of the season, player of the season, Dan? Was that something you expected? I feel like it might have come as a consequence of him getting 100 appearances in the Prem and him being the first Brentford player to do that. But we've said before that he's a player that we could upgrade on, but it's clear to the players that they've named him player's player. So he's obviously massively rated within the squad. What did you think of that?
I'm not surprised. He's dependable. I think this season was probably one of the most difficult seasons in terms of picking a player of the season. In terms of, I was very reluctant to pick players who had missed a certain amount of the season, and that's a lot of the squad. And I think that was just a nod towards him. You know, he's always dependable. He's always there. He's never really having a bad game. He's always 6, 7 out of 10. He's covering multiple positions. And, you know, we've really needed someone like that this season with all the struggles we've gone through. So it doesn't surprise me. But equally, I do also think, you know, perhaps we can upgrade on him. And I also, if everyone was fit all season, I don't think he'd be the first name on everyone's lips. But, you know, you can't complain with what he's done over all 3 seasons now. He's shown how available he is. And, you know, sometimes that's the most important trait that you need in someone.
Yeah. Oh, James Milner, I think, for sure. I can see him at Brentford for a while. Let's talk about Wissa's goal, because I feel like if we're going to talk about any goal from the game, it should definitely be Wissa's goal. Who wants to talk about Wissa's goal? Callum or Craig? Who are we going to?
I think it was brilliant. I'll tell you, I watched it this morning, and I think it's just that little chip over the 2 Newcastle players, and just the composure to be right behind it in the West End, and to beat a very informed Nick Pope. I must say, you know, I've always rated Nick Pope, the way he commands his box and produces some excellent saves. You know, even with a goalkeeper of that caliber in goal, he was nowhere near the shot, and he was 25 yards out. That's what frustrates me, Wissa. He's proved it in the past with goals out of nothing like that. And I just think, why don't we see it more often? You know, I mean, we saw it against Luton. That was great. I remember against Aston Villa a few seasons ago as well, where we created an opportunity and scored from outside the box. And Oldham as well with his overhead kick. You know, I think it was a fantastic finish, a really good finish. And I'm gutted. They put 1 goal in the end of the season kind of goal list with match of the day on the last day. They should have put that one in there as well. That was an incredible goal from Wissa. And hopefully we see more of it next season. You know, he comes in drips and drabs with these particular goals he scores, and I hope he can, you know, carry on like that next season. We've got a player in there, and I want to see him score more goals next season for sure.
Yeah, the man scores bangers. He scores some really good goals. I've even listened to a couple of podcasts I was listening to this week, like a fixture wrap, and they were talking about Wissa's goal. He's getting a little bit more attention. Honestly, with what we've spoken about him before in terms of that he's a confidence player, we don't really know what we think his best position is as that lone 9 as opposed to coming in off the wing. But there's also been debate about whether he's better as a sub impacting a game or whether he's better starting and playing the full 90. But if you look at his highlight reel, he has been fantastic this season. Some of the goals that he scored, I feel like people are actually waking up to it, as opposed to it just being, whenever I speak on other people's podcasts, I always mention Mbumo. But I think now, as the season's gone on, you see the caliber of goals that he's scoring. People are starting to rate Wissa, and I would be I'm not worried about him leaving this window. But if he scores another, I think he's on 12 now. He scored 12 this season, I think maybe. If he scores more next season, he'd be another one that we could be looking at selling on, and we'd be making a tidy profit out of it as well. We throw it away minutes later. Don't think too many people would have been bothered about the result. We kind of touched on it already. Would have been nice to get a comeback, but equally nothing to play for. Glad that you mentioned Nick Pope, Callum, because Neil signed off in true Neil Maupay fashion. Craig absolutely clattering into Nick Pope. Just nice to see Neil get that send off. I would have loved for him to start. I'd love for him to get a goal as well. That would have been incredible. But just Neil signing off in the way that Neil should sign off, Craig.
What made it even better was the reaction that he got from Nick Pope, because Nick Pope just was not happy whatsoever, and he kept going. Other players were getting involved, and Nick Pope just kept trying to go after him. So in true Neil Maupay fashion, he signed off with a moment of shithousery. Just didn't get that goal, but you know, this is one of those things where it's just as good. That moment of shithousery is just as good.
100%. Anything else from the game that we want to talk about, boys? We've got post-season thoughts, and then obviously we're going to do our end of season awards towards the end of the episode as well. But anything else from the game we want to mention?
I just thought.
Go on, Dan. No one wants to hear my point, but I tell you, try and take a guess what I'm going to say. But anyway, carry on, Dan.
We'll let you have a moan in a minute. I just thought tactically, it was quite interesting, especially in the first half. I thought Wissa was playing very centrally, considering he was actually on the left, meant to be on the left. I thought we allowed basically that whole left side to be covered by Reguilon, and we just didn't have as much width as I thought we normally had. And I thought that was just tactically a bit strange. I don't know if that really helped us going forward. I thought maybe to expect Reguilon to cover that whole side, attacking and defensive in a back four, I thought maybe we could have done with a bit more width on that side, like what I was doing on the right. I thought it was just tactically interesting. I'm not sure I'd seen us go that narrow before. It's almost like we had two up front and Brian on the right, which was just interesting, I thought.
Yeah, before you say something, Callum, tactically as well, I found it interesting that since we've reverted to type with the 4-3-3 and Ivan Toney's come back into the team, we're still adamant on playing out from the back at every opportunity. I can't really remember, considering how direct we were last season in terms of whack it up to Toney and have the willing runners in Wissa and Brian. Can't remember too many times where that happened in the last game. Obviously, I think Toney gets the flick on for Wissa's goal, but apart from that, we seem, I don't know, obviously Thomas Frank has said that we're going to try and play different this season without Toney being there, but I would have thought that once Toney comes back into the team, we would see that more direct approach that we saw last season and that bore so much fruit in terms of beating some of the better teams in the league. But go on, Callum, go for it.
No, first there's actually two things. One thing was popping into my head, but firstly, Reguilon, you know, he put a tweet out after the game and thanks Thomas Frank in particular for giving him the love of football back again, effectively. You know, I think he's been an incredible player for the club. Yes, he made a little mistake for, I think it was Isak's goal, I think, on Sunday. But, you know, I would love to see him come back in some particular fashion. Whether the club would want to utilise that or not, I'm not too sure. But what an individual he was for the club and got us through a sticky patch of January onwards. So, you know, if we don't see him again, fantastic. I apologise. I may have doubted him a few times, but what a man he's been for Brentford Football Club. So, good luck in your future if we don't see you, Sergio, but we'll happily have you back. Fingers crossed. But secondly, Frank Onyeka, where the hell was he yet again? Thomas Frank, explain yourself. Someone put a tweet up. There's a girl I follow on social media. When we were playing Bournemouth, she bumped into him in Bracknell. I was like, flipping heck, he's just completely gone. He's gone, isn't he? I'm gutted. At least I got to see him score, though. So anyway, never mind.
I definitely take what was it rumoured that he was going to go to Fulham or Everton or one of the two? I saw rumours in January. Definitely take whatever money they throw at us for Frank Onyeka. It's weird because it just really hasn't worked out for him. You thought he would kick on last season. He had that good spell, and then I think maybe he got injured. But it's just, I don't know. He's such a Marmite player. Some people you speak to think he's great. Some people that you speak to think he's crap. I definitely think there are games where he's suited to the opposition. I think games against City when we've played, he's been pivotal in all the games that we played. But yeah, I wouldn't be too annoyed to not see him again.
Well, if Thomas Frank goes, he may well be at the club. Who knows? But I mean, we've had an interesting few days with Thomas Frank, haven't we, boys? I tell you, I mean, he's been linked with United, Chelsea. I mean, I still don't think he will. Bayern as well. Yeah, I still don't think he will go. But conveniently, he is in Germany now. He's in the BBC pundit
saw that.
So let's hope that doesn't mean anything. He might be off to Munich. Who knows? But
I think companies close. Yeah,
company. That is ridiculous. What on earth are they thinking?
Listen, Callum, you provided me with a nice segue into our next chat. Post-season thoughts. Thomas Frank's speech at full time I thought was really nice, and he spoke about the club as if it will be certain that he's going to be in the dugout next season. I don't know if you guys read Jay's article in The Athletic, the long read that he did with Thomas Frank afterwards, but he confirmed that. He said, I will probably be on that touchline on August 17th. I think that will happen. I'm happy here. I've said it many times and I mean it. It's close to the perfect football life. I'm not in any rush or searching to do something else, but I also think I've learned in life I'm open for what can happen. Obviously, as you mentioned, Callum, he's been linked with United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Bayern, all within the last kind of month or so. I think that Chelsea one that started to pick up a little bit of pace even today, that Todd Bowley and co consider him sort of the leading candidate in that race. I think Enzo Maresca is another one and Kieran McKenna as well. But it's the Chelsea one worries me more than anything. And I spoke to Jay as well, and I wonder how much of how much weight each factor holds in that. Obviously, he's got a great thing at Brentford, and the crazy managerial kind of ins and outs at Chelsea in the last couple of years. There's been like 6 different managers if you include the interim ones. It would obviously be a big contract at Chelsea, but I'm not saying that Thomas Frank doesn't have a big contract at Brentford now, but it would be a lot more money. And I think Natalie Sawyer has said on this podcast before that if Frank was going to leave, it would be for a top 6 club. But I don't know. It's a weird one because I think it's about timing. Right now, Chelsea is just a crazy place to be. I can't even believe they got rid of Poch after their owners saying that it's about patience, it's about time, and it's about the process. And they finished the season so strongly, and then they sacked the manager. But Dan, where are you with Thomas Frank? You've seen lots of rumours swirling. I tweeted that I think that I'd convinced myself that Thomas Frank would be at the club for at least a couple more seasons. But when you see all of these top clubs, and Thomas Frank is kind of one of the main managers being mentioned as potential candidates to take those jobs, it stirs up within me a little bit of unease. But what do you think about it?
First of all, the way he is in interviews is exactly how all Brentford fans would want to see him answer those questions. He's very respectful towards the club. He doesn't make a promise. He's not saying, that he's definitely going to be at Brentford for the next however many years. He says, he doesn't know what's going to happen in the future. But he's very happy where he is. He's not pushing for a move. And certain people could take note of the way he is portraying himself. And if he was to leave, I certainly wouldn't have any bad feeling towards him because he's earned that opportunity. And obviously any of these clubs are at a higher level. Having said that, I'm not sure, particularly Chelsea would be good for him. I think the fact they've sacked Pochettino, I don't think it makes any sense at all. Especially after, they're probably in their best run of form all for a couple of years, and they ended up 6th in the end. Which actually, if you said that to them at the start of the season after they came 11th last season, they would have surely taken. And they've got a group of young players without any real leadership or experience in that team, especially now Thiago Silva's leaving. It's just a very young group of players. No real winners in there that have been there and done it before. And he won't be afforded the same time. If he has the same start to his Chelsea tenure as he did for Brentford, he'd be out of a job again by September. And I think in one of his interviews, Thomas Frank did say he knows that even if the grass may seem greener next year and next door, he knows that it's not necessarily the case. And I mean, from even looking at someone like Graham Potter, I hope he looks at that job and thinks, yeah, maybe there's a better opportunity somewhere. If Bayern Munich went in for him, I think that could have been quite good for him, because with all due respect to other teams in Germany, I think it is a bit of an easier job. Obviously, he has experienced players. He has the likes of Harry Kane. But looks like the Burnley manager who got 26 points is going to get that one ahead of him. But yeah, obviously, I hope he stays, and it will be very challenging for us to look for a replacement. I'm not, just to think about who we
cannot replace.
Of course, I hope he stays on. But I would respect his wishes if he did decide to take an opportunity.
It would be interesting to see if one of our former set-piece coaches, who's just gone to Chelsea, Bernardo Cueva, would have any part in any possible move for Thomas Frank, actually. Obviously, Thomas Frank, I imagine, had something to say when they brought him in 2019. He's going to be a big miss for Brentford. But you would think someone who will know Thomas Frank incredibly well, if he will have a say if Chelsea were to make a move for Thomas Frank. I hope, as I say, I still don't think he would. I think it's a circus what's going on at Stamford Bridge at the moment. I think it has been for the last few seasons, with the Abramovich saga, with players being signed on 7-8 year contracts. And of course, this thing now with Poch, I think a manager would be stupid to go to Chelsea Football Club at the moment, personally.
Clip this up when Frank goes.
I'm being deadly serious. No one's heard that saying for a while, deadly serious. But honestly, I think you've seen it with Potter. I said it the other day when Sky were talking, first of all, about Thomas Frank going to Chelsea. I said, you look at what's happened to Graham Potter since. The only club really with any sort of move for Graham Potter was Ajax, and he turned them down. I can't see any reason why anyone would want to go to what I call a sinking ship at the moment at Chelsea.
Yeah, I feel like if Frank were ever to leave, it would almost seems like he'd need that kind of step up to not the top of the division in terms of the top 6, but that middle grounding where he gets a bit of experience under his belt at maybe a Newcastle or a West Ham, Callum, or a Brighton, or just those teams in between the top 6 and the bottom 14, just so that when he goes into that top 6 job, it's not going to be like he hasn't had experience in the upper echelons of the division. But like you said, Dan, if he starts like he did at Brentford at any of these top 6 clubs, he will be out of a job by September anyway. But the Chelsea one does worry me, considering what Chelsea want in terms of they don't want a manager, they want a head coach. Like you said, Callum, Bernardo Cueva's already there. They just want someone who's going to focus on the football and the football only. Craig, someone mentioned to me, I think it was on Twitter, that it feels like the end of an era with the Frank chat. Obviously, Frank's not gone yet, but with the Frank links, with Benham wanting to sell up, with Jay leaving Brentford to cover Spurs, do you get the feeling that it's an end of an era? Maybe.
I think, with all due respect, I don't think Jay, moving from Brentford to Spurs is much.
That was just a joke.
With all due respect, I know Jay's been on before, and he'll be on again over the summer. But all due respect, I don't think that has much of an influence.
That was just a joke. I meant just in terms of Benham would sell up and the Frank links.
Well, if Frank were to go, then 100% it would feel like an end of an era. I mean, it's been is this 6 seasons now? I mean, he's like the second or third longest reigning manager, head coach in the Football League, behind, I think, Pep Guardiola and is it the Coventry manager or something like that as well?
Maybe.
Probably,
Fact check.
He's one of the longest serving managers in the Football League, and if he were to go, then yeah, it would massively be in the end of an era. And you just can't tell, can you, what would happen to the football club if a new manager were to come in. Now they would have to buy into the regime in which Benham has set, and Thomas Frank obviously did. But I don't want him to go. I would hate to see him go, even though I'm going to say, even though that for a long time we was talking about the possibility of him having to move on at the end of the season because of how poor a season that we was having, saying that is this enough for him? Has he had enough of the club? But you know, that talk that he has at the end of the game, which suggests he's still in it for the long run, kind of beats us up in what we were saying, isn't it? I don't think that he's going anywhere, but it would definitely be the end of an era at Brentford for sure.
I think there was a few people on Twitter that were saying about how on the end of what you just said about Frank potentially leaving the club at the end of the season anyway, just because of how poor it's been. But I think there are a few people on Twitter saying that he's just looked extremely frustrated at times, and you would be with the amount of injuries. And I've said it before, I think you see the gap between the rest of the league and the top six when all of these teams that have loads of injuries are really struggling, whereas the rest of the teams have all these injuries, but they're still doing okay. So it might, I don't know. It's definitely going to be interesting to see how it evolves. But I feel like that kind of sentiment, I feel like a lot of fans might think that because he's been so frustrated this season, there's been so many injuries and so many things out of his control. Maybe there's just kind of that realization that this is maybe the ceiling with Brentford, that he might not stay. But like you said, Craig, the speech after the game definitely eased a lot of nerves in terms of that, and his interview with Jay as well. He's saying things that you would expect a manager who's happy in their place to stay. Let's move on to Ivan Toney. Probably the last game we'll see him in a Brentford shirt. Lots of discourse on Twitter about whether he's a Brentford legend or not. Obviously, that's been exacerbated by him being in the 33-man provisional squad for the Euros. And you'd imagine that he'll probably still be a Brentford player during the Euros. So if he was to play, or if Harry Kane got injured, we would have someone potentially playing in a Euros game, which is quite mental. But just final remarks on Ivan Toney's reign, Dan. I feel like just Ivan Toney's tenure at Brentford. I feel like we talk about him every bloody week on this podcast. That kind of hiatus where he had his ban. I'm not sure how much we actually spoke about Ivan Toney during, like, when he had that ban, but definitely not as much as we've spoken about him since he's been back. But just kind of final remarks on his tenure at Brentford, Dan.
I mean, looking back, you can't deny how big a role he's played ever since we signed him from Peterborough. He broke the championship record at the time in terms of goals. He was the one that got our opening goal at Wembley from the penalty spot, and also got us back into the game in the playoff semi-final, also from the penalty spot. So you can't take that away from him and what he's done for us from that perspective. And, you know, you could argue that in our first two seasons, he played a big part in us not only staying up, but, you know, earning a top half finish and almost making Europe. And at that stage, you know, he was knocking on the door for England. He wasn't actually getting into the England squad initially when many of us thought he should have got in. And he deserved that, and he earned that. But it is a shame how it's kind of fizzled out. Obviously, the whole betting scandal doesn't help. And I don't really think he took enough responsibility for that. And then obviously he's come back, done a lot of interviews, and not necessarily followed it up with consistent performances. So I think it is the right time now to cut ties. And I hope he does rediscover that form. I think from his perspective, it's a little bit worrying if you're looking at it from clubs that may potentially buy him, because it's been over a year now really since he's shown consistent form and he's not getting any younger. So I think it's a very crucial summer for him. But in terms of his Brentford journey, I just can't see it continuing any further. And if it did, I can't see it getting back to, you know, maybe what it was a couple of years ago. But yeah, I think you've also got to acknowledge what he's done in the past.
Yeah, for sure. I think you can't, like you said, you can't deny the player that he's been for us, and it is a shame that it's kind of turned sour since he's come back. But we wish him well. Hopefully, he has a good Euros. I mean, if Kane does get injured, or if he comes on as a sub, the game against Belgium, I thought he was fantastic, and he linked up with Mainu and Bellingham really, really well. So there's nothing to say that he was not going to have a good Euros if he does play, which I don't think he will. But let's talk about some of the outgoings. Saman's gone, Shandon's gone, which I'm really pissed off about, really upset for him because I've always rated him and don't really think he's gotten a fair shot in that midfield. Sergio's obviously gone. You touched on it already. Callum, Neil, that one's going to really hurt, and Charlie Good, which I don't really care about, to be honest. But let's, Callum, any word for any of the departees?
Yeah, I mean, I'm gutted for Shandon Baptiste. I'm not really sure what happened towards the end of his Brentford career, to be honest with you. Now, I think the last time we saw him may have been Tottenham away, I think, or in and around that time. But you know, he came in, the 2019-2020 season, I believe, last year at Griffin Park. And he came in with a lot of potential. I think we saw a lot of that potential, and I'm gutted not to have seen him more. I think he was a player who did a lot for Brentford Football Club, and just gutted he didn't get that proper send off. Particularly on Sunday, I didn't even see him walking around with the team, to be honest with you. So what's happened there, I'm not too sure. But Baptiste, of course. I mean, I know you haven't talked about. I know Charlie Good. I know. I think he was especially in the first season in the Premier League. You've got to remember he was chucked in the deep end for quite a few games. Actually, I look back to the game at the London Stadium against West Ham when Wissa scored a late winner, and I thought he played incredibly that day in the back line when he was chucked in and put in a shift with Zanka. And says it all when we had a back line that day and we went and beat West Ham United, isn't it? No, I hope he gets a club. I'm not sure what's happened with Charlie Good off the field, but obviously he had a lot of time off of football. He had a move to Sheffield United, which didn't pan out. Went off to Wigan. I think he did a little bit better there, got some games under his belt. So hopefully he'll go and get a new club. But yeah, I mean, I don't think this is the end of the outgoings. I think we're going to have a lot of outgoings. I still think this is going to be a year of transition. I think a lot of players are going to leave in the summer. But yeah, those two in particular gutted to go, but for the best, for sure, for the best.
Word on Salmon Godos, Craig. Obviously, quite underwhelmed with him re-signing at the end of the transfer window last summer. But I think we can all agree, even though we've not really seen him in the second half of the season, but in that first half of the season, Salmon Godos was a very reliable player and very useful in some games.
Yeah, you've literally taken it off my tongue. He's one of those players that no matter where you put him on the pitch, he's going to give 110%. He played over these. I mean, how long has he been our player for now? He's been our player for what, 4 years, 5 years?
First championship season in the year after we lost to Fulham. So year of promotion.
So 4 seasons, and he's played in a magnitude of position. He's probably played in every position except for goalkeeper. And he's one of those players that he'll just put in an immense amount of effort in no matter which position he's put in. But I'm going to say that he's in the kind of same caliber as Anchor is. If we want to be pushing on in the way that Thomas has said, then he needs to be one of those players that we look to upgrade. Yeah. But, no, thank you to all 5 of them for the effort that they put in at the football club. I can't lie. I feel like Charlie Good is going to be the most forgettable Brentford player. And I feel bad for saying that. Because I totally forgot he was our player until we've just brought it up again. But Baptiste, he had some influence in that first season as well. I remember him getting sent off at Wolves when we was 2-0 up, and it made for a very interesting final 10 minutes to that game as well. And he scored at home this season against Luton as well. I think that might have been his. No, he scored at Leeds United as well when we drew 2-2 there when Patrick Bamford injured himself celebrating. But yeah, I mean, when we look at that list of players, he's the one that you kind of feel, should feel maybe a bit hard done by for the lack of game time that he's had. But yeah, I'm glad Reguilon came in and did what he did. I'm glad that Malpe's come in and did what he did. Charlie Good obviously never really got a look in. Shandon, I feel, has been unfortunate, and Saman's just one of those players that, he's a squad player and he will play in any position. So big thanks to all of them.
Yeah, shout out to Neil Mope as well. Thanks for the memories. Unbelievable. Modern day Brentford legend. Obviously not probably the caliber of player we need in terms of Thomas Frank saying that we want to be pushing up to the higher echelons of the division, but for the memories, for the shithousery, for the amount that guy loves this club. And I was so sad that kind of message that he put out on his socials, talking about his first days at Brentford and leaving and then coming back. That guy will always have a special place in, I think, every Brentford fan's hearts. You can tell how much he loves the club, the connection that he's got with the fans. What a fucking bloke. Neil Mope, modern day Brentford legend. We absolutely adore you, mate.
One of our own.
Salute.
One of our own, yes, one of our own. Right, shall we move on to our end of season award, boys? I think we should do it. I thought we've got a special guest as well, Craig.
Yes, I should let him know that
we've got
a
special guest. I saw it. We saw
Get
a comment
him
on the last. We saw a comment on the last YouTube video that we should bring Craig's dad back for the season finale, and that's exactly what we're doing. After his brief appearance on the Villa at Home full-time show, Craig's dad is back. He's going to be joining us for the end of season awards. But I thought the way we do this is to get a conclusion on each category. We all choose our winner. I think I've already got our winners in, and then we're going to have to come to a group decision on who/what the award is going to. So I thought if there's any categories where a couple of us have got the same player / goal or whatever, then we can just give it to that player or goal. But we're going to need some discussion around it. So the categories are as follows: player of the season, goal of the season, signing of the season, most improved, result of the season, best limbs of the season, best moment of the season, and the Neil Mope shithousery moment of the season award. Craig wanted us to divvy up the best limbs and the best moment of the season because he felt like it could be something different. So I realised that I haven't told you guys about that yet. But so yeah, best moment and best limbs, different categories. So we'll go player of the season first. I'll kick things off and we'll go from right to left if you look at it on YouTube. Player of the season, my player of the season was Ethan Pinnock. He's the one that I voted for in the end of season awards. And he was the supporters player of the season anyway. Craig, your player of the season.
So we have actually gone for the same player. Right. I voted for him as the actual player of the season in the fans vote as well. And just to support the GKU still, I'm going for Mark Flecken. We are going for Mark Flecken.
Russ, is that your vote as well?
Well, I did, but then I realised I put him for another category as well, so I've changed my mind.
Who have you gone with?
I've gone with Brian, with Mbeumo.
Brian Mbeumo. Callum?
For me, it has to be Janelt. I think a player who's done very, very well over this season, and he is a club man. And I'm glad he got the award on the evening itself. So for our particular awards, I'm giving it to Janelt.
Dan, it sounds like you might have the deciding vote here, mate.
Yeah, and I'm voting for Ethan Pinnock, who is also I voted for in the Brentford Awards. I think it was hard this year because there's a lot of players who have missed a certain amount of the season. But Pinnock has still played the 4th most minutes of any Brentford player. And Janelt was in my mind, but I just don't think Janelt's had enough games where he's been like, the best player on the pitch. Whereas when we haven't had Pinnock in the team, you've noticed, and there's been certain games this season where you think he is a cut above, whoever's next to him. So I think he deserves that one.
Yeah, 100%. All incredibly important players, especially Brian. But I do feel like since the Brighton game, and then he missed, what was it, like 3 months of the season maybe after Brighton.
Brian.
Brian.
Yeah. He came back in the Burnley away game, didn't he? So
yeah, missed a long time, but all really good shouts. Goal of the season. Wissa won the club's goal of the season, didn't he, with a bicycle kick? And I thought Godos was robbed, to be honest, because just in terms of being a football purist, on the half volley, outside of the box, off the post and in, I'm going Saman Godos. Craig, who are you going?
So I've gone for a bit of a controversial one, I think, actually. I've actually gone for an Ivan Toney goal.
Ooh.
And it is his free kick back in the first game against Nottingham Forest, purely based on the fact of how much it rattled the Nottingham Forest fans. So that is why I've gone for that. If I had to choose an actual one, it would be the Wissa goal at Luton.
At Luton? Oh, fair.
Yeah.
That's rogue. All right, fair enough. Fair enough.
Sure.
Russ, who's your goal of the season?
I went the same as you, mate. Godos's goal.
Godos,
Yeah,
Callum.
Brilliant goal.
I'm actually going for a late contender, which was the Bournemouth first goal from Brian Mbeumo. Actually, I thought the starting off from Flecken, then out to Wissa, and then straight into Mbeumo, as easy as that, and then bang in the bottom left-hand corner. So Brian Mbeumo's goal against Bournemouth the other week.
Dan?
I went with Godos as well, but I think this season was the highest standard in terms of goals. I think there's 5 or 6 goals that could have won it this year, and I think compared to other
Onyeka,
seasons,
Sheffield
they don't normally
United.
score again.
Zanka's at Villa. That's
Zanka's
Villa's
at
goal.
Villa.
Yeah.
That's the push.
Damn,
That's the
man.
Pushcastle winner. That one. That's
Forgot
the
that
Pushcastle.
Right, so Saman Godos goal of the season, signing of the season. This one might be controversial from me. I'm going to go Nathan Collins, and that's definitely going to split a few hairs, purely because I think we have given him grief. We've said it a million times in the pod, but when he's good, he's good. When he's bad, he's fucking terrible. But I think Nathan Collins, first season, I think he's slotted in nicely. I think you can tell on the ball he's fantastic. And I'm looking forward to him being the mainstay in the team next to Ethan Pinnock next season. So yeah, signing of the season for me, Nathan Collins. Craig?
I've gone for a loan signing. They say you should never fall in love with a loan player, but I've gone for Reguilon as our signing of the season. He come in at a time when we were desperate for a fullback. And bar maybe 1 or 2 moments through this 5 months that we've had him, he's been nothing short of pivotal to the team. So I've gone for Reguilon.
Russ?
Yeah, I went for Saman Godos.
Saman Godos.
Yeah. I thought he was signed at the end of the transfer window. Nobody wanted him back. And yet, when we had all those injuries, the games that he played, don't matter where he got put, he never had a bad game this season for me. So, and I thought once people came back from AFCON and back from injury, I thought it was quite unfair, really, that he never really got any more minutes. So, I mean, I don't think he played from when, I don't know, Reguilon signed all the way up to that last game of the season against Newcastle. I don't think he got any more minutes other than that.
Yeah, no, he didn't. Very few. Callum, signing.
Has to be Collins. I think he's had an up and down season, but overall, for what we paid for him and the potential he's shown, has to be Nathan Collins.
Dan?
I went with Mark Flecken, actually. It was between him and Collins. I think both of them have had up and down seasons, but I think Flecken in the second half of the season has been very consistent. And I think the biggest compliment I can give him is I'm not too worried about that position going into next season. And obviously his distribution at times is something that sets him apart from some of the other keepers in the league. So I've gone with him.
Fair. So I think Nathan Collins has got 2 votes there. So we're going to have to go with Nathan Collins. And to be fair, I don't think that's too bad of a shout. There's a couple of games that stood out. I think Chelsea away when we beat them 2-0. I think everyone was raving about how great Collins was that day. And I think, was it definitely not Wolves at home, but I think
Fulham away, I thought he was very good, actually, when we went there and won 3-0. And I remember that game, I was absolutely bricking it that day. But we went there and put such a composed performance in and beat them in their own backyard with ease yet again. I think that was incredible. And I of course he had a few little downers here and there, but overall I think Nathan Collins has done very, very well this season and should be very pleased. And we've got a player there for sure, so he's going to do very well.
Just got to iron out some of those mistakes that he's extremely susceptible to, and I think the potential is definitely there for him. Most improved, I've gone Mikkel Damsgaard for his second half of the season. I think we've been raving about him every week on the podcast since all. I think maybe just before the international break, but definitely after the international break. I think he's been our best player. So I've gone Mikkel Damsgaard. Craig?
I'm going to second that. I've also gone for Mikkel Damsgaard. I mean, I'm one of those ones that's been an advocate for him this whole season, and the season has ended now, and I'm still so gutted for that shit over that Sheffield United game.
Russ?
I went for Mark Flecken, mate.
Good shout.
to sign in the summer and, having to fill David Raya's boots and the stick he was getting in that first half of the season, since that Man City game at home, he's just gone from strength to strength. And like Dan said earlier, you don't hear a bad word about him now, and everyone's quite happy with the fact that we're going into next season with him as number one. So,
yeah, Callum.
Yep, I'm going to have to agree. Flecken, I think, he had a few little sticky periods at the start of the season. Came out and said I was struggling as such to adapt to English football. But I think, for what he's done and progressed, it has to be Flecken. And I must say as well, how he's now communicates with his back line, which I think he was struggling to do at the start of the season in particular, with those probably the nerves of playing in the Premier League for the first time. He's settled himself into the club. He's working well with the back line. He's keeping clean sheets and putting off some great saves and commanding his box. So yeah, Mark Flecken.
Dan, sounds like you might have the deciding vote again, unless you've gone for someone different.
I've gone for someone different.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I've gone for
Who's
Keane
your
Lewis Potter. I think he has shown improvement more consistently this season from last season for a longer period than Damsgaard. I think since around Christmas, we've seen very good performances from Keane Lewis Potter, and he's really started to grow it every time he's been on the pitch. And I think he edged Damsgaard for me just because I think he's shown it for a bit longer.
Yeah, no, that's a very good shout. I definitely should. I think we might be prone to a little bit of recency bias with our shouts, Craig, just because of how well Mikkel Damsgaard has been playing over the last few weeks. But we've got a toss-up then. So Mikkel Damsgaard has got 2 votes and Mark Flecken has got 2 votes. How are we going to decide this, boys? I'm more inclined to give it to Flecken, to be honest, just because of the turmoil and the criticism. I think he's done a great job to turn it around. I also want to give a special shout out to Mads Roerslev, who I don't think would have anticipated playing as many games as he's done this year. But I think, again, if you look at the players that have played the most minutes for us, I'm pretty sure he'd be right up there as well. And he gets a lot of shit, but he is definitely a player that's getting better, and it just needs to iron out a few subtleties to his game in terms of going forward, taking his man on more than he did when he was in the Championship, for sure, because when he was playing in the Championship, he was definitely someone that could stand his man up, whereas now doesn't really do that too often. But shout out to Mads. I think he's had a good season. So Mark Flecken, most improved. We'll go to result of the season. I am going with the Luton 5-1. I think that was the best game we've played, some of the best football we've played all year, maybe since we've even been in the Premier League. A little bit of gloss taken off the fixture just because we conceded a goal at the end. A 5-0 would have been fantastic. But yeah, 5-1 for me. Craig?
Again, we're going to be much of the same here. So I've gone for the 5-1 game based on a lot of factors, being the actual day out itself as well. The away end that day was just unreal. And to, score 5 goals away from home, it would be difficult to top that. However, I understand why he's put his one as well. So I'll pass on to that here.
Go, Russ.
I've gone for the game before that, the Sheffield United home game. Just for the sheer importance of the game. Even watching your pod before that game, that was the first time that must win was really mentioned, you know what I mean? And to be fair to them, it weren't the best game in the world to watch, but we stood up and we got the result, and that took away a load of pressure, a load of nerves, and we was able to go into that Luton game and did what we did.
Yeah, for sure. Callum?
Russ is reading my mind. It's quite scary. This is quite scary. I couldn't have summed it up better myself. Sheffield United and the importance of that game, and I don't need to say anything else. So yeah, it's been explained already. So there you go. That was the most important game of our season, and we pulled it off and helped us stay in the division for another season.
Dan's got another decider.
Dan, another decider for Dan.
Is this a good time that I've gone something different again? So I went for Fulham away right at the beginning when we won 3-0 because I thought, it was a great day out. I think to beat them 3-0 on their own patch was obviously our best result there since probably that Good Friday game in about 2015. And obviously at the time it was right at the beginning of the season, and I think Fulham ended up having quite a decent home record. So I think that was a very good result in a game that is, quite important to a lot of Brentford fans, and obviously a big rivals game. And it's a shame that we couldn't beat them at home as well to do the double on them, even though it's our worst Premier League season.
Yeah, no, definitely a good shout. How are we going to do this then, boys? We've got 2 for Luton and 2 for Sheffield United. What are we
I'd
thinking?
go Luton out of those two.
Dan, yeah, you
there
got
you
the
go.
deciding vote.
There
We're
you
going
go.
Luton.
Don't have to
Yeah.
decide and vote there, then, yeah.
Luton just for performance, because I
But-
think everything went our way that day, and we could have even scored more than 5. That was the only thing
100%.
that was frustrating, was that we conceded as late as we did. You could see how annoyed Flicker was, in particularly that day where we conceded. And I don't think we've seen a more clinical performance than Luton away. I want to see more of that next season. I want to see
Yeah.
more.
Let's combine the two. They were back to back. They were both as important as each other. Let's do 2 results of the season, consecutive weeks. We'll go Luton and Sheffield United. Next category, best limbs of the season. I'm going Wisser at Villa to turn it around to make it 3-2. I saw a video from the Villa end, and they were very good. And I think the caption on the video is for how small of a club we are. We can produce some good scenes in away ends and in home ends as well. So yeah, I'm going Wisser at Villa. Craig?
So I think I've gone for a pretty random one, actually. I'm going for the 4th goal at Luton. I feel like we'd literally just scored the 3rd goal, and there was a few Oles going in the crowd, and the ball goes over from Mikel to Brian, who puts the ball across, and Keane scores. But everyone was still kind of celebrating the 3rd goal, which meant the 4th goal celebrations were kind of an over-exaggeration, like limbs of the 4th goal. So I've gone for Keane Lewis Potter away at Luton.
Russ?
I've gone for the equaliser at home to Man United.
Good shout. Very good shout.
Having dominated that game unbelievably to go behind in the 94th minute and thinking, shit, to then equalise 3 minutes later was just sheer relief and joy.
Yeah. Callum?
I'm going to go Chelsea away, actually, with the 2nd goal. I mean, some may not agree necessarily with how the fashion it was scored, and the late, obviously, VAR checking it for quite a while for whatever they were looking at. But I think we scored through Ethan Pinnock, and then we then had to, compose ourselves after that with a lot of pressure from Chelsea for a considerable amount of time after that first goal. And I remember just begging Morpay to score, and then he was like, shit, Sanchez is catching up here. So he pinged it across to Mbeumo, who tapped it in the empty net. And I just thought, to go there and win again at Stamford Bridge with another clean sheet and to score in such a fashion in the 95th minute, deserved all the celebrations it got.
I am certain that Maupay didn't get the assist for that game. I'm sure he got tackled by Robert Sanchez.
Yeah.
Did he actually? Did he actually?
Sanchez,
hence the reason Brian weren't offside.
Hence why Brian wasn't offside. Sanchez caught him up and tackled him.
Yeah, I know. That's the fastest I've ever seen.
But still,
that
was a good one. That was a good one.
Dan, what about you, mate?
I found this one the hardest because we haven't had many late winners or those types of goals that will, normally cause limbs. But I went with Whistle at Villa as well. I just think at the time in the game, it was very unexpected. 10 minutes earlier, we were 2-0 down, and you thought it'd just be, a normal afternoon where, we're just not as good as them. And I know we didn't end up winning that game, but obviously at that point, we turned it around to go 3-2 up. So I've gone with that one.
Yeah, I think that's a fair shout. I will give you a props, Russ. Aya's equaliser against United was good, but I didn't even fucking celebrate it because I thought it was offside. This is VAR, mate. VAR can just piss. I thought Tony was offside in the build-up, and I didn't even bloody celebrate. So, but it is a very good shout. If it was, it definitely probably would have been my vote. Best moment of the season. I've gone for Ivan Toney's return against Forest just because of the media attention that return garnered in the week before. Mainly caused by him and all the bloody interviews he was doing, but also just the fact it was live on Sky. Everyone was talking about it, and he steps up and scores the free kick after moving the ball. It would have been funny if Forrest did a tweet after that game as well. That would have been hilarious. But yeah, Craig, what about you? Moment of the season?
So I have gone for another return, but it is not Ivan Toney's. I've gone for Neil Maupay's first game back. and just the reception and the noise of the crowd. It was just a moment to relish for him and for the fans. Which kind of leads on nicely to Dad's moment of the season here, if he hasn't decided to change his mind like he did a moment ago.
Go on, Russ.
I've gone for Maupay's first goal back against West Ham.
Yeah, that was good.
The sheer joy of everyone in the crowd having witnessed him score again, and the sheer joy that he showed having scored it. So, yeah, Maupay's first goal back.
Callum?
Luton away for me. I think just we knew at that point we'd done our bit and we were going to be celebrating another year in the Premier League. So Luton away for me, the moment of.
What you've put a moment into just one fixture then, not
Absolutely.
a goal or. All right, okay.
Absolutely.
Right.
I just think I think the final whistle. If you're looking for anything in particular, I'll say the final whistle. Fully knowing that we were safe. The other comical part of the season, I might say, is when we were 4-0 down to West Ham and the amount of people who left the away end, including you that day, Mike, in fact, actually. And Craig as well. There were so many people I was not expecting to leave the ground that day. And everyone was so
4-2, not 4-0. So.
Dan, moment of the season.
It's between two for me. I went with Luton away as well, particularly in the second half, because we were 4-5-0 up, and we knew we could just enjoy that second half. It was great football. We knew that was basically it in terms of us being safe, and we could look forward to another season. And I think it was the best atmosphere. Also, second one, Maupay at Forest when we went 3-2 up. I thought that was a very good goal, and I thought again that was a massive moment this season. In terms of winning that game, we were in a real slump at the time. Forest were one of our rivals, and it was, they scored at the beginning of the game. It was 2-2 at the time before Maupay scored, and that was an absolutely massive game as well. And that maybe should have had a shout for result of the season too, but skipped my mind.
Yeah, we'll go with moment of the season. We'll go Luton, definitely, just in terms of what the result meant, the fluidity of the football, how happy we all were at full time. I'll give that to you, Callum. I thought you were going to try and condense a moment into a whole fixture, but the full time whistle at Luton we'll give moment of the season. Last award, final award, definitely not the least. Neil Maupay, shithousery moment of the season. There's a few contenders here: the Spurs dart, the Emi Martinez antics, the McTominay tweet. I think just because we lost the Spurs game, I'm not going to go for the Spurs dart, even though it absolutely rattled their whole team. I'm going to go for the McTominay tweet. The fan wanted my shirt. I think that's a fantastic tweet. I think that's got one of probably the most engagement in terms of the tweets that he's done and this kind of persona that he's built on the back of being a shithouse. So yeah, I'm going McTominay tweet. What are you saying, Craig?
I've gone for another tweet, but this is the Luke Littler tweet. And it was just based on the people responding saying he's only 17, and like, man, if you're big enough to give it, you're big enough to take it. So that was my moment.
Russ?
I went for when he kicked the ball away from the sideline at Chelsea. Stop him taking a quick free kick and getting booked. I thought that was quite amusing.
Yeah, that was so needless as well. So needless. Callum, go on.
I actually think him walking out the G-Tech the other week with fish and chips, just saying he was
Dan?
I went with Martinez. I thought that thing was so ridiculous. And 10 minutes later, it happened again. They just couldn't get their hands off each other.
Yeah, no. I'm reluctant to award a winner out of Neil's shithouse moment. So I think we should just go with Neil Maupay's shithousery 23-24 season. That's our winner. So let's rattle them off. We've got player of the season was Ethan Pinnock, goal of the season, Saman Ghoddos, sign of the season was Nathan Collins, most improved was Mark Flecken, result of the season, we said Luton, didn't we not? Or was it Luton and Sheffield United?
Oh, you take them both.
We're combining them into one. Best limbs of the season was that Wisser at Villa?
Yeah, I think
that's what we said. Yeah. Best moment of the season was Luton full time, and Neil Maupay shithousery moment of the season. We'll just give it every single one because they're all glorious in their own right. I think that wraps up the awards chat. So are we happy with that? I think that's a pretty fair round. What do you reckon?
Yeah, happy with that.
Good stuff. I think that'd be a good point to wrap up the podcast, chaps. Obviously, I want to talk through some summer plans. We kind of did it on the last episode anyway, but we're going to have an episode with Jay Harris just going through the season, talking about some pivotal moments, similar to what we've done today in the end of season awards, but a little bit more in depth. That one will be coming out within the next couple of weeks. But yeah, do keep your eyes peeled across socials for that one. Then we've also got Craig's 2023-2024 live quiz. Craig, do you want to tell people about that? That's what we're going to do.
Yeah, so just going to put together a few questions, probably about 20 questions from throughout this season. Just going to have a little live show get together, have a bit of fun and reminisce about what I'm going to describe as our best, worst season ever.
Yeah, and I'll be promoting that on social media. So I will post a time and I'll promote the shit out of that. So we want to see as many people in the live as possible for that one. And then we've also got a number of special guests. I met someone really cool in the tube the other day, John McKenzie, who works for The Athletic, who speaks about Brentford quite a lot. He knows Bernardo Cueva quite well. So there might be some room to maybe get the both of them together. But we've got a ton of special guests. We're going to do some Euros content as well. So do keep your eyes peeled for that. And just in terms of thank you for another season. It's been great doing the podcast this year again. Second year of doing it. It's been such a laugh. Listenership's going up. People are coming up to us at the games telling us what they like about the podcast, what they don't like about the podcast as well, which we're going to change. We're going to implement in the new season. But yeah, just I want to say massive thank you to you boys as well. I don't know if any of you want to say any words before we sign off for the final time for the 2023-2024 season.
It's
What
been
an
great.
emotional season. Oh, go on then, Dan.
You go first this time, Callum. Go on. Get out of the way.
Been emotional, boys. I've enjoyed every minute of it. Thank you very much. It's been a great season once again. And yes, thank you all for watching. I know we've got some leaflets, actually, in fact. So if anyone thinks of anywhere we can post them up or get the podcast going out to even more people, please pop up to any of us, Mike in particular. He's put them together. He's done a great job. So, but thank you all. Thank you for joining. Thank you for listening to my shit, as per usual. Yes, I won't try and swear as much like Thomas Frank, but no, it's been a great season. Thank you very much, all.
Dan?
Yeah, I was just going to say it's been great to be involved as well. I think for us three, it's been our first season doing it. But yeah, it's been great to be involved, and it's great to see how it's growing. And yeah, it's great to hear at various events and games from other people, and it's been very good feedback. So we're very grateful for everyone that listens, and we hope to bring more content over the summer and next season.
Yeah. Craig?
Well, I was going to sign it off with just 3 words.
Up the bees.
And you've just taken my moment away from me. I just like Dan just said, this is the first season for us, and it's been a lot of fun. Dad's come on with us as well for a couple of shows, so it's nice that there's something that we could do together as well. But like Dan said, been stopped a couple of times at Brentford, and it's being recognised for something good as well. This is something that people watch, people enjoy. He sits and watches every single one that we do. So just to bring a bit of something else to the football fans, the football club, and I really enjoy it, and I hope it goes on for a long time. I'm going to use my 3 words now. Up the bees.
Up the bees. Just before we leave, guys, remember to drop a comment down below, subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels, and also give us a follow on our socials to stay up to date with all the episodes I just mentioned, all the content coming over the summer. That's at the Eden Road on Twitter and at Eden Road Pod on Instagram. Signing off one final time. Cheers, boys. It's been a pleasure.
Up the bees.
Up the bees.